Welcome to Scattering Agate. On this channel, it's a place for you to learn the simple truths of the Catholic faith. I'm going to go through the Baltimore Catechism, and I don't know how far up I'll go. I'll just start there. I'm just trying to take one little step at a time. So today, I was going to dive right into the Baltimore Catechism, but I decided that we would start instead with because everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten. So basically, I was thinking about kindergarten and how that first year, what we teach children are all the old Bible stories, and remember coloring and coloring and coloring all the Bible stories. And what I would like to help you and understand is that all those Bible stories are not just disjointed, but there is a line of salvation that goes through the Bible. And even though the Bible itself can be a little bit difficult to read and difficult to understand, and hopefully we can have some lessons later on that, but these very fun stories of the salvation history they connect, and the way they connect is through the bloodline, so that eventually through the bloodline we come to Christ. And at the beginning of the Gospels, we oftentimes have the genealogy of Jesus, and that if you listen to these stories and understand kind of the line, you'll hear those names in that genealogy. So I have this great Bible timeline by Jeff Cavins, and actually the Bible that I have also goes with this. And so, because I just kind of enjoy Bible history, and I like to know when I'm reading or listening to the stories where in that salvation story we are. But what he does in this Bible history is he's got, if you can see the red line, that's basically the bloodline of Jesus. So there's very specific names that these go through. So basically, we learn, the first story we all learn is about Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve, it was just one holy couple, right? As you can see, we're going to expand as it goes on. So we have Adam and Adam and Eve have Cain and Abel. Remember, Cain kills Abel. But guess what? They had more kids than that. And the line of the bloodline goes through their son Seth. So Seth comes along. They continue to produce, be fruitful and multiply. They have more and more children. The Tower of Babel happens. You remember that story. And then we have Noah. And with Noah, it goes to one holy family. So it's expanding. And then Noah, they have the flood. It kills all the people except for he and his family. And then he has Japheth and Ham and Shem. So Shem, it goes through Shem. And actually, I take that back. Babel happened after Noah. And the people were scattered all over. And then God calls one specific man, and that is Abraham. And so with Abraham, we have one holy tribe. He takes his family, and they start to move in and to follow God. And then he has, the son that he should have never had because he was old and his wife was old. And he's given this great promise about the future, that his offspring would number the stars in the sky and the sand in the sea. So he becomes this one holy tribe. Then he calls him out of Ur. He has two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. And Isaac is the one he loves the most. It's also the one that he remember, he went to sacrifice, but he didn't. And then Isaac has Esau and Jacob. And Esau was the oldest. Jacob cheated him out of his blessing. And so he's the one that he puts the fur on him, and he goes to his blind father and basically pretends to be Esau, steals the blessing, and so the bloodline starts to go through Jacob. Jacob is named Israel, and he has 12 sons. And did we go to that? Not quite yet. So yeah, the 12 tribes of Israel. Actually, I think we can go ahead and flip to this. Now, there's two important figures of the 12 sons of Israel, Jacob, Israel. Joseph, remember, Joseph had the colorful coat. We always were coloring his coat, and he was the one that was sold into slavery, and he ended up in Egypt, and he ended up ruling over was part of the king brought him into his court. He had a status within the court. And then there was a famine, and all the other 11 brothers and their families were starving, so they went to Egypt. They end up meeting Joseph, their brother, but the more important son was Judah. And so Jew comes from the word Judah, the tribe of Judah. So that's the next step. Basically, then they live in Egypt, and they actually end up in slavery for 400 years. I didn't realize that till just the other day. That's a long time. So they were in Egypt, slaves in Egypt for 400 years. And, I just wrote the names here. We had Judah, then we have Perez, then we have Hezron, Ram, Aminadab, Nahshon. The bloodline just continues on until we get to Moses. But Moses actually was not in the bloodline. I thought that was interesting. But he did get the tribes out of Egypt. We had, remember, the Passover and all of that. And then they become one holy nation finally. When they're one holy nation, they're wandering around in the desert, and God makes a covenant with Moses, and this is when we have the priesthood comes along, and we have the Holy of Holies, the tabernacle, and all of those things. But the bloodline goes down through, looks like Salmon and Rahab. I don't know those stories, but we have a period of Judges, and then we have the period where we come to one holy kingdom. And that's when the Israelites had a king come in. They wanted to have a kingdom. And we have here Saul, then David, then Solomon. David being the greatest king. Again, another prophecy in that time about a kingship that would go on forever. And so this is why they were waiting for this king, that we eventually knew to be Jesus. So basically, the story of Ruth and Naomi. Ruth was not an Israelite, but she married in, and she married Boaz. Boaz had Obed. Obed had Jesse. And then Jesse had David. And David being the greatest king. And then Solomon. And Solomon built the first temple. And it just keeps going on like that. We have Rehoboam, Jehoshaphat. It goes on and on. Joachim. I don't know how to say these words, but if you go reading the Bible, you'll hear all these names. And then they go into the Babylonian exile for 70 years. And the temple is destroyed for the first time. They did rebuild it eventually. So Zerubbabel rebuilt it. And then eventually in the fullness of time, so all this time has passed, in the fullness of time comes Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. And then after he's resurrected, we have the one holy apostolic faith. So that's a very, very simple way to understand the salvation story and our history that brought Jesus, who was incarnated into our world in the fullness of time through all of these people. If you like to read the Bible stories, they're fun to read. I really enjoy reading them in children's Bibles. I would even recommend, there's some great comic strip Bibles, and I mean, we can read those too. We just need the simple basics. There's a lot of intricate details that, unless you're a Bible scholar, we really don't need to know. But it's good to know the very basic outline so that when you hear the scriptures read at Mass, that you kind of understand what's going on. So that's why those old stories are important. And that was our first lesson, our kindergarten lesson on scattering agates. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.